Thank you. Very cool. Okay, awesome. Thank you for joining us to our bi-weekly KW commercial virtual meeting still, but it's working better than ever. We have the pleasure of hosting today John Merrill. John is the segment leader of the retail industrial division at KW Commercial nationwide. Super excited to hear more from you, John, kind of about your background, of course, and how you ended up in that role, and anything else that you want to share, vision for that division, the company, etc. We're all here, honored to have you on the Zoom.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. I don't know that I have anything all that compelling or exciting to share, but I'm happy to give it a shot. I started my career as a CPA, so I have a financial background. Then I went to a company called Duke Realty Investments, which was a private developer at the time. We did industrial, office, and retail. We went public in 1994. I was heavily involved in that process. I left there in 1996 and went to a little company called CB Commercial that now is CBRE. I became an investment sale broker. I did that for 15 years. Then I ran the Indianapolis office for 5 years. And quite frankly, more office investment sales than industrial. I did both, and a little bit of retail, but quite frankly, more office. I then left CBRE. I fired myself because I didn't have a vision for the leadership for the next 5 years, and I went to a company called Holiday Fenoglio Fowler. I'm almost done, I promise. Which is now Jones Lang LaSalle Capital Markets, and they merged right after I left. I did not know they were doing that. Merger was in the works, but I co-ran the Indianapolis office, which meant I was on the national leadership team for office industrial, and then also just the general leadership team. And I took a brief stint to an investment company. We bought one project. It went extremely well. We just harvested that. It was a grand slam home run, but I couldn't agree with my partner on what we're going to do next. So I left and started my own company. And so we buy some smaller properties as investments, which I highly encourage everybody to do. I should have done that way sooner in my career. And I guess, how did I get into this role? We recognized a void in leadership. I'm in Indianapolis. We recognized a void in leadership among KW Commercial. So we started what's called the Ohio Valley region. We started a leadership group. Through that process, I learned what Alicia was doing. I learned what John Letourneau and others were doing in Chicago. And I became fairly passionate about trying to help with that. And so when they relaunched KW Commercial, which I think has been a huge success, I was asked to be the office and industrial division leader, with the plan being I would spin off and do office. But Bruce took office, so they asked me, can I do industrial? And I said, absolutely. I actually have more national industrial relationships than I do on the office side. Industrial tends to be more of a national product. So anyway, that's how we're here. We have the monthly mastermind calls. We're going to have one in mid-December that's going to be a combined call about business planning for next year. We are intending to have training to follow nucleus that's specific to the product divisions that we have. And I'm trying to grow a community of people that specialize in industrial so that we can share best practices, etc. And I'm also working, I want to develop a process whereby if someone has a large assignment and they want to utilize the product division leaders to help with those assignments, I want to come up with a way to do that that's fair to everybody. And it's pretty easy if you already have the assignment and it's just to help on execution, but it's a little more difficult when you're going for the pitch. And, we're trying to, but I want that to be, we can do that now if anybody ever needed help, but I'm trying to do that in a manner that it's not a negotiation each time. People know what what the program is if they want to opt into it. I kind of came up with that idea from family reunion. I had a few people call me aside that had big assignments, and quite frankly, we're a little bit concerned about how to execute them. So that's about all I got.
Well, I love that, John, because you bring a pretty solid background, right? Even prior to to that industry, and that evolution of you becoming a leader in that role, and not just hey, can you lead? Is you sound like you already initiated that by design before it was becoming even an option. And that's pretty cool, because we kind of do the same thing over here in our region over here, Southern California. And you mentioned Alicia; she's one of the leaders,
right?
Significant leaders out here. But that was kind of a byproduct of pandemic, where mid 2020, all the commercial was like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
And we just brought them all together virtually and kind of kept that consistent. So we have agents from any possible office. We don't, it doesn't matter shape and form, all the commercials coming together to support that cause.
Yeah, so we do that locally here too. We don't have as many, and we're not as far along that curve as you are, but I think that's a wonderful thing. But then if we can roll all that up into the national leadership, which I think we've come a really long way, I think it's really a powerful platform, and we can really be disruptors in the industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I also love the fact that what you mentioned, because it sounds like I don't want to use the word mentoring, right? It's more of a, should be a professional lingo used to that, but and it sounds like it's part of the vision of what you guys or what you want to come up with, which is fantastic. More like a strength, like you mentioned some of the companies, and they've been doing this as a company, as a brand for a long time.
Right.
They're more, maybe focused and driven on one specific brand and how to do it. KW Commercial is still, we're still kind of like out there. At the same time, we have, I believe, way more bigger potential than them for many other reasons. So I appreciate that attitude.
I agree with you completely on that. I think we have tremendous potential, and I love my position because Alicia and Cynthia and others carry the bulk of the weight, but we have biweekly calls, and I get to give some input, and so I like the position that we're in from that regard. And I want to be clear, if anybody has a question or two, just call me or email me and I'll answer those. I don't have my hand out. My hand is only out if I really got to invest time, relationship, capital and energy to help somebody get something accomplished. But I get calls periodically with people having, a lot of us are generalists, so people have a question or two, and I hopefully am able to either answer it or point them in the right direction. Happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you for that offer. Couple of questions for you, and you can talk locally because the office industry, commercial particularly, can be very local.
Right.
Industrial might be more of kind of statewide, nationwide.
Right.
We saw the boom during pandemic. What happened with the industrial? We saw the trend, going downtrend on the office. But we'd love to hear from you a little bit on that. Whatever you're comfortable to share, just for us to learn a bit more. Again, if it's local or if it's more of a nationwide kind of insight.
Yeah. So again, I don't have office responsibilities nationally, but I do work on office still. And what I see, and so that is more localized. Although I think some of the trends that have been accelerated and probably more deeply embedded by the pandemic are still, a lot of people are still debating whether those are, whether, permanent or temporary, and how temporary. But what I see in our market is the small tenant market. For us, that's 2,500-ish average square foot, probably anything under 5,000 square feet. Garden office in the suburbs, near homes. People don't want to commute as much as they were willing to before. They don't want to go into spaces with common areas here. So, we buy, I own ownership in 6 buildings, and only one of them has common areas in it. And that's by design, because people like to, a lot of people got locked out of their office space during the pandemic. And people don't like that. They don't appreciate that very much. So that part of the market's pretty tight. We're still seeing a lot of activity, but you get over 10,000 square feet and people are pretty hungry. Landlords are pretty hungry. I'm hopeful to get a 50,000 square foot office tenant rep deal. I interviewed again today about it, and I'm like, I can't wait, assuming I get this opportunity to get out of the market, because there's a lot of shadow space. Companies that have taken too much space, they don't really want to publicly admit it, like they might have during the Great Recession, but there's a lot of space that's not utilized, and I think we'll be able to find some, pretty good spaces that meet their criteria. So it's kind of a have and have nots in the office sector. I don't think it's going to die like a lot of people do. I think that over time, the need to collaborate, et cetera. And we're not seeing much new supply either. Historically, we saw a lot of supply in the office market that we don't see. So it's still, I would say, generally in equilibrium in our market. On the industrial side, it's we have something like in Indianapolis, something like 20 million square feet of industrial distribution space under construction. A peak year before the last couple of years was 10 million square feet, so we're double. And we're probably one of the top 5 markets in the country for new construction, and right now it's still absorbing, but we're not a top 5 market, in terms of market size. So right now it's still absorbing. We've seen really good rental rate increases, really at historic levels, but we've also, with the volatility of interest rates that's occurred, we had over 1,200 acres of industrial ground, not that I had listed, although mine are still holding on right now, but that we're under contract, that those contracts have been dropped and they'll probably be repriced as a result. So I would say in the industrial market, it's still, it's softened a little bit, and we see some signs of I don't even want to say stress, some signs of cooling of demand, but so far it's holding up. And I listened to a podcast, which I would recommend to everybody, especially with you being in California. I call him the head of research at CBRE. His name's Spencer Levy. He's a friend of mine. He has this podcast he does that's called The Weekly Take, and it's always featuring either large clients or top producers at CBRE, but it's available online. You can just listen to it. And he actually talked about the Southern California market on the last one this past Monday. I think everybody should listen to that. It's still a good market. There's a lot of barriers to entry. People are concerned about being homeless in industrial space. Industrial properties here might have traded $50 a square foot, $60 for bulk industrial at one point in time. And now, especially mid-size and what we call flex spaces, I'm not talking about office suites. I'm talking about some office in the front and industrial in the back. The demand is so high and the supply is so low that we've seen prices for those go above the prices for conventional office space.
Thank you for sharing. By the way, we put the link on the chat as a resource.
I got a question.
Go for it, David.
Hey, John. Are those mostly investor use, investors, or their owner use that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have this theory that we're going to have a lot of people starting to retire, and they don't have succession plans, excuse me. We're not talking about leaving the union here. We're not talking about Civil War. Succession plans. And so I've been calling on a lot of them to see if they might be willing to sell their real estate. And, quite frankly, I'm hearing it took me 5 years to find anything that worked. No, and it's a hard no. But investors are seeking it. And so it's hard to get people to part with the product right now because it's it always comes back to supply and demand, but perception plays a bigger role, quite frankly, in my experience, than anything else. If people think industrial is hot, then they all kind of gravitate to that, and that's probably over half of what drives pricing in my experience. So certainly there are market dynamics that push that. I mean, we've had more construction than ever going on in industrial space. We also have the lowest vacancy rates in history, which is why there's upward pressure on rental rates. But I am a bit concerned that if as part of my pitch to some of these owners, that if the distribution space gets overbuilt, that'll kind of take the rose-colored glasses a bit off of industrial, and it'll permeate all the way down in terms of the perception for that product type. Did I answer your question?
Yes and no, but the reason I'm asking you is this: that I've been getting emails, a lot of emails from other brokerages that I've seen a lot of leasebacks. That means that owners are actually selling the property but keeping the business and leasing back. Why do you think that's happening? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Well, first of all, that's a way, oftentimes, well, real estate's more liquid than the business operation, right? And it sells at a better yield from the seller's perspective. So if you do a sale lease back, that's a way you can take that value out before you retire without impairing the value of the company. So it's more, even though real estate's not the most liquid thing in the world, it is more liquid. When the stock market gets volatile, single tenant investments become much more popular and much more interesting to people. So they're selling into a market that's hot right now. And I think last but not least is that there's trapped equity. If you look at how much people bought some of these properties for and how much appreciation we've had in the last few years, and I don't think that's all pandemic related, but that certainly didn't hurt. There's trapped equity in there, so you can take that out one of two ways. You can do a sale lease back and pull that value out, or you can go and add some more financing, most of which they don't really, people don't care to do.
John, I'm just going off what you're talking about right now. Do you think it may possibly have anything to do with the, bringing up the fact of, repealing the 1031 exchange and taking that away as well? From one side. Secondly, in regards to that as well, are you seeing anything out there, any 1031 money out there anymore?
Yeah. So yeah. Well, first of all, as it relates to 1031, I've been through a lot of cycles and a lot of administrations, and they attack it. It gets attacked on a regular basis, and every time that it's attacked by Congress and the leadership of the country, I think they figure out kind of how ingrained and how critical it is to the industry. So I don't really think it's so much likely that the 1031 exchange is going to go away as I do think there's pressure that the long-term capital gains tax will probably go up. And so I do think that is driving some of that volume, probably more than the 1031 exchange.
Got it. And then are you still seeing any 1031 money out there right now, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm not really in a position with the types of, I'm doing mostly development land, and I'm doing a lot of tenant rep type of work. So I'm not really selling as much investment property, even though that's what I've done in the past. I did just list one. For a while, I decided not to do that because I didn't want the brokers that are dealing that product to see me as a competitor. I think I've been doing this now long enough that that's not as much of an issue, because I bought some properties through some of them and didn't act as a broker in that regard. But so I'm not really in a position to opine as to how much 1031 exchange money is out there. But I would say I have seen some people put exchange money into land, which was not something I had seen in the past.
Really?
You know, and I will say, you know, overall volumes are down. So I'd say exchange money is probably down a bit, but it's still one of the most popular ways to build wealth.
Of course. Of course. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, David and Omid, for the great questions. John, what would you, tell us how, can we encourage one another or this population here in Southern California to get more involved in what you guys are doing as a division in the company? So eventually, again, it's going to create a win-win for all of us.
Yeah, I think first of all, join as many of the mastermind calls as you can, and don't join them and sit there and listen. Join them and raise your hand and ask questions or share things that you've done, because I don't mind talking. Everybody that knows me knows that, but I don't really like getting on there and trying to have a mastermind question and I end up answering a lot of the questions. I think there's a lot of great ideas embedded in our people out here, and we got to get them. We got to get them to share those and be more confident in sharing those. And then the other thing, and I mentioned this at the commercial summit, and it was brief, so maybe people didn't pick up on it, but I get a little frustrated sometimes when we do too much communication through Facebook. But hey, it's a channel, that's okay. But too many times people will call me and they'll ask me to help with something, and I start to help, and then they completely ghost me. We need to respect each other's time and energy more. I'm serious. I don't mean that. It's constructive criticism, right? But until we treat each other as colleagues and not just other people with the same logo, we won't be doing everything we can to be successful. I think we have a great culture, but I just think we have a lot of people that are new to the business, don't have the confidence. And so, and hey, I'm guilty of it too. I get busy and I get focused on my things, and sometimes I don't get back to people as quickly as I would like to. So we just all need to, in my opinion, you asked, in my opinion, I think we all need to kind of redouble our efforts in that regard.
John,
Yeah.
can anyone join those masterminds? Commercial?
Yes, they're on the training calendar, and if you register, they'll send you the Zoom information. And if you'd like to be on them, my daughter is my operations manager. She's quickly becoming a broker, but if you email me at john@merrillpropertygroup.com, we can add you to the list and remind you about them as well.
Yeah, and I added the link to commercial calendar, the national one, on the chat right now. Monty, did you have any questions or anything to add?
Yeah, I was just on the topic of sharing and what's going on and what we see and all that. So I have two buyers who want to buy hotels in the $10 to $15 million range, and so I've been trying to get hotels for them to buy. But every single hotel owner that I've called, and I've called 160 by now, said like, hey, if I sell my hotel, what am I going to do with the money, right? So find me something to buy if you want me to sell. And so there's always been a constant thing now. So the point is that even though we'd like to do two transactions, the point is that's the only way to do it at this point is if you want someone to buy something, sell something, they need to have something to buy. So we have to, the more we talk to these people and figure out like who wants to do what, and we can almost like match them. Okay, you sell this one, you buy that one, the other way, right? So it could be a chain reaction, but we need to have the depth and the energy required to cause the chain reaction to happen. Otherwise, nothing happens. That's where
I agree with that, and
yeah,
I agree with that, and that's what happens when a market gets heated, which it is right now. Even though it's cooling a bit, it's still a pretty favorable market as people go. There's not enough available for me to reinvest in. So that is a challenge. I think that one of the best things that we can do is ask them what aspects about that particular investment type was it that they liked, right? And And then there are similar properties. There are other property types that might have similar characteristics. Like for hotels, I'm not an expert in hotels, but during the heavy inflation days of the, I was still in high school in the 70s and college in the 80s, but I do remember the really high inflationary times. And then when I got into real estate in the 80s, the late 80s, people talked about hotels were great because you could raise the rate every day, right? Well, you can't do that in multifamily, but you can raise it annually. And so you have a quicker, less capital intensive and on turnover and similar, characteristics, same with self-storage. So I would talk to those investors. What is it that you liked about the hotel business? And, and then to diversify, we can find things that have some similar characteristics.
See, in the hotels, one thing I found after talking to so many in the last 2 months, so many owners, is that most of the owners are trying to get from the lower end, like the smaller hotels, to a little bit higher hotels, but they don't want to cross the threshold. So they usually have a threshold around 100 rooms or 125 rooms or something. So there are those people who start from like 10-room hotels and want to go to 125. So that's the whole range. So as long as you talk to those guys, they are ready to deal with each other, right? And there's another range from 125 to 250. And that's where institutional money comes in. And so at that point, it's all about the numbers, right? So that's what I found, this two range. And so if you want to deal in the range at the bottom, like, 10 to 125, the more people you talk to, things can happen because they're all trying to go up, right? And the other thing is that they don't want a complicated hotel. They don't want like, a hotel that have restaurants and things like that. They just want like simple, like very low end, like,
Limited service. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
So that's a good, that's still a good, they're still doing things, right? I found people still doing it, right? So that's really good. But it's just a matter of, you have to have both sides. Yeah. So we'll see.
Thank you, Monty. Any other questions to John, as long as we have him?
Hey, if you don't mind, I'd love to listen, and please go ahead and do what you normally do. But if you don't mind, I'll listen. I love understanding what's happening around the country because it makes me look smarter to my clients if I can tell them what's happening, right? We're all a pretty mobile society these days. And then also a lot of times I can say, okay, is that a trend or something I ought to be thinking about in my marketplace? And so I'm a big student of trying to learn what's happening in other places and see how I can either adapt or articulate how that might benefit my clients in my own market.
That's awesome. Great attitude for sure, John. Jason, did you have anything to add?
Well, I had a question for John about, hiring, let's call the quintessential junior for, working teams, having some trouble finding the right people, bring them on, burn them out, bring them on, burn them out. Some people quit with a fury, some you never see again. And I just figured of the years you have in the business, have you had any success, and what would you advise them recruiting people what to look for?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And I quite frankly have struggled with it myself. When I was with the bigger firms, when I was at Duke, we had an internship program where we would rotate people through different aspects of the business, and we had a budget for that. And we had jobs that were available for people that were, when they graduated, that were salary-based jobs. So that was fairly easy. When I moved to CBRE, it was a real challenge because we had a senior heavy office. People had been in the business for a long period of time. And I didn't really want to train anybody else. A, it was a distraction from their main business, is what the attitude they had. And B, they would also, if I teach this person how I'm doing things, then they may become my competition in the future. And there's no incentive for that within a big organization like that. And at one point before I joined CV, they had this great training, which we have now, and they were kind of known for that. But then everybody left there once they got the training, to go someplace and get better splits. So we have the best combination of both of those things, I believe, where we are. So it was a challenge. So the way I met that challenge was I found a leader in the marketplace that, this is when I was running the CB office. I found a leader in the marketplace that was a teacher, and he had a structure for bringing people up and training them. We also brought people in through our research group because that was one of our few salary positions. But it was a challenge, and I was only able to change the culture by changing some of the people. Then when I went to HFF, which is now Jones Lang South Capital Markets, they did have a program for internships, and they had an analyst program because they were all capital markets, right? So they had an analyst program where you'd pay somebody as an analyst for a few years. They'd learn the business, and then they could convert into a production role. So they had a pretty good model for it. Then I come to Keller Williams, and I'm thinking, I know how to build a team. I know how to do this. I have failed right, left, and center, to be perfectly honest, until 1 year ago yesterday, I hired my own daughter. And I'm not kidding. It's and I know that's not an option for everybody, but why did I hire her? Well, I knew she was really bright. I knew she was underutilized in her position. She was commuting a long way to her job. When she got to work from home during the pandemic, and then they were going to make her start coming back in. And I knew that she was vulnerable, and I had just closed a big deal. So I thought it was the right time for us. That's worked extremely well, but I understand that's not an option for everybody, but why did it work really well? Well, first of all, she has a learner's attitude. She's not a taker. You got to look for somebody that's a giver, not a taker. And I say that in any terms that you want to say, but somebody that's hungry and knows they need help, because so many people come in and they think they're smart, and you want somebody that's smart, but they think they'll just going to do it on their own, and truthfully, they can't. Or it's rare, right? And so I think that's probably the biggest thing, is you got to look for the right personality, and then you got to look for the skill set. It's really an unusual skill set to be able to sell and do administrative type of work. So if you're looking for team members that you want to develop into brokers, then you've got to look for one personality type and have them do their best at the operations and the stuff you need to get done until they're able to really perform on the sales side. Or I would say, if you're looking for you're looking for back office support in your team, there's a lot of people that have that personality and they want that certainty. So you got to structure and make it as simple as possible. I think that's one of the mistakes I made, is I used all these creative ways of trying to have, incentive. I had one guy leave my team because another team offered to pay for his co-star. And when I did the math, he's paying him, way more money than I am, or he was paying to me, but they made it simpler and he understood it. So I don't know if there's any tidbits in there, but it's a challenge. And I think the biggest thing is you've got to, yeah, go ahead, Meny, please.
No, I'll tell you from the other side, right? Because, I'm new in this game, and I got my license last year. And after I got my license, I talked to Meny, like, hey, I want to do commercial and residential both, right? And so I got started. But I talked to a few people to get some help, and it wasn't easy, right? Because some people are more helpful. They'll say, they'll explain me everything I need to know, and the first 10 questions is okay, and after that, this is like, hey, join my team or don't call me, right? Don't say it in that many words, but that thing comes out sometimes, right? And so that's a challenge. Now, in the beginning, when you're starting, even co-star is a challenge, right? I mean, how much you're paying for that? But now I've been paying for it for more than a year now, so I'm good with those numbers. But co-star, I mean, it's not just co-star, right? There's a bunch of things you need to get, so it all adds up, right? And then you talk to the leader and say, and they'll say, oh, you know what, you're going to get 20% for the first transaction, 30 for the next one, and maybe you will ultimately might get like 40 or 50%. So those are very steep, what you call steps to cross. So if you really are looking for someone to join your team, I would say like try to make it easy for the person who wants to join. I mean, I wanted to join some team, but really I got all kinds of incorrect numbers back and say like, okay, so I need to pay for everything, and then I'm going to get only 20%. So that doesn't make sense for me, right? So I struggled a lot for some basic information, and and that was the time when somebody had scooped in and said, hey, we'll give you a fair deal and we'll pay for your some expenses or whatever. Then I would have joined them by now, right? So I'm just saying that this is the reality of the situation. I've talked to many a couple of times, and I've talked to others. So I'm sure there's nothing new here in what I'm saying, but that's a perspective from a new guy, and I'm sure maybe David can add to that, right?
I have my own opinion on this. I think, a lot of us, when you get into this business, we are on, this business is based on commission, and we think everybody should be that way. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of people, we have two type of people. One type that is actually, they like to earn by the hour. They don't want to wait until something comes up or whatever. And the other one is just, they want to no limit, and they want to get the higher commission. So if you want really good support, you need to have a budget for that person. You need to have a budget to set aside and say, hey, this is a budget for this year that I'm going to be spending on getting the employees going. And this is my goal, and this is how we're going to be doing it. That's the only way that you can get it. I remember when I was at MetLife, the president of MetLife came out and said to us that everybody thinks that we're in life insurance business, but we're not. We're in agent business. That means we hire 1,000 agents a year. If we can keep 10 of them, that's all we need. So you have to have you have to be clear on what you want to do as far as setting up your business. If you want people that actually do the work, you got to pay them by the hour. You got to give them some kind of a stipend to stay alive. They can't really wait for the commission. So having said that, this is a challenge, and it's a numbers game. You just have to get maybe 10, 15 people at a time. And if you create a competition between them, then it would probably stick better than just being there and not really going anywhere. I can talk about this a lot, but it's just, I personally feel that, like Monty said, if somebody wants us to go to a team and pay for everything and still share the commission, that's not a good option for a new agent, as far as I can think about that. But again, if that person is willing to pay some of the cost, you say, okay, this is a sacrifice that I need to make.
Yeah, that's true. But so anyway, I mean, not everybody's cut for everything, right? So we have to just find the right people, find people who are motivated. Like in my case, I have another stream, I have different streams of income. So I can let that pay for my expenses for a long, long time. So I'm okay, right? But then, I don't have the point is, if you're doing anything else, then you can't do 100% this one, right? And then you have a different problem, so there's no perfect answer, but there should be some incentives for the person joining, and then give them a fair deal, and then they'll stay, right? That's how it is.
Yeah, and provide them something that they can't easily replace.
Yeah.
That might be your back of the office marketing, or deal administration or whatever. But that's another lesson I've learned, is I'm not trying to recruit anybody else until I have my systems and processes more in place. I thought I could build that boat as I went along, and that hadn't worked out so well.
Mm-hmm.
That's good feedback, guys. The follow-up question, John, because I do follow the trends, regionally and so forth, and out in Indianapolis, when you talk about volume of sales and where specific assets they come from, or even from the lease perspective, what's your opinion about being a specialist versus a generalist and how it applies to your business, and when do you know to make the switch or to switch back?
Yeah, so you asked my opinion, so I'll give you my opinion. So I think you either have to be an expert in a product type or a geography. You can't be all things to all people. And why I say that is, you've got to be outstanding. You got to, most of my business comes from referrals from my other clients. And it's because I've done an incredible job for them. I don't have to pay them for those referrals. And I get some big ones that way, really big ones that way. And it's because we try and do more than the average agent, right? We try to really dig in, be creative, do everything, in a compelling manner that's noticeably different. I mean, we try to differentiate ourselves. If you're trying to do all things that come to you, there's an old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. So what I've tried to do is build, I'm more of a generalist now than I was before in any earlier stage of my career. But so the first thing I did was I saw an opportunity in land, and I saw how there was a lot of land for sale with signs on it for years at a time, a lot of residential agents, and I don't mean that in a disparaging manner, but a lot of people just got a land listing because they knew the owner of the land for a long period of time, and that owner just trusted them and said, put your sign up, and thought it was a commodity. Well, I took over a land listing that Cushman & Wakefield had before, and I've gotten way more done than Cushman did, and my client loves me. So he's recommended me to 4, 5, 6 other people, and that's half my pipeline for next year. So, I undertook to get to know the economic development people and the mayors in the communities and understand what they were looking for and what their needs were, and to team with them instead of coming in and saying, hey, I have this land and I got this multifamily developer that wants to build it, and so you need to rezone it to multifamily. And they're like, no, that's not our plan for that area, et cetera, et cetera. And you have an uphill battle. You're probably not going to win. It's going to waste a lot of time and energy for everybody. So I actually go, and I have a deal under contract right now that I got because of doing this. So I had some land that is multifamily land, which I'm exchanging finally contracts or, LOIs back and forth on in this community. And it's zoned that you could build multifamily there, but it would take a variance. So I asked to meet with the mayor and his staff, his zoning people, economic development people, and say, hey, I think this is a multifamily site, maybe a little bit of retail along the front. What's your vision for it and why? And we had a great conversation around that. And then I happened to mention in that meeting something about doing industrial. And my client looked at me and he goes, I didn't know you did industrial. I got another 35 acres down the road. And so I got that assignment as a result of one of these meetings. I try to be different. And when I tell people that I go about it that way, they go, oh, that makes sense. So then okay, so lands, it's a long game and there are big fees involved, but it's usually a year to close, right? So I'm like, I'm going to do some more tenant rep. And so again, I just try to put myself in the shoes of that client. What would I want, right? And one of the biggest things is they want to understand the process, and they want to understand that the market, but the biggest thing is they just want to talk to you a lot. So I return my clients' calls, usually within a few minutes, maybe within a few hours, but that really sets me apart and then leads to more business. So, if you're going to try and do more things, either start by really knowing a geography or really knowing a product type in a larger geography. And then when you become excellent at that and you have a reputation in that, then maybe look at what the next brick is you can add to that foundation. That would be my advice.
I appreciate that. we get business from all sorts of types of referrals. And that becomes kind of the conundrum
Yep.
because you're not going to turn down business. You're going to try to do it, say, differently than everybody else, but do it well.
Yeah. Okay. So I do turn down business now. When my daughter came in, she's like, Dad, why are you doing, why are you working on this little, deal? I'm like, well, somebody referred it to me and I have an obligation to do it. And she's like, yeah, but you shouldn't be working on anything less than, X dollars a commission. And I'm like, well, but I like working with these clients and I like, but she was right. She was right. And so, what we do now, because we get a lot of referrals from the residential agents, and at first I tried to serve every one of them, but a lot of them are really small and they aren't the best use of our time. So what we've started to do is if somebody calls and they have this, an opportunity that's too small for us, we do what we call a reverse referral. And that is you go execute the deal, but we'll look over any documents. Any questions you have, you call. And usually the agents that we're doing this with, they're intelligent. They just don't know the space. So they ask the right questions. And we found that that's really worked because it's taken a lot of the workload off of us. We still make a little bit of money for, for the consulting that we do for it. And people are then they also better understand when they get a bigger one that it's probably not something they can handle. So that's what we've done.
I appreciate that, John. Thank you.
John, awesome conversations.
That's the benefit of having gray hair and having been around a long time, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm still working on it on my end, but you definitely made us smarter, right? And it's also, I was considering being smart or by perception if you ask the right questions, right? It's an art.
It is an art. It is very much an art. And asking that question and then listening is also
100%.
critical. Yeah. At the end of the day, everybody, I had training when I was at CBRE. It was this daughter who's now 30 that works for me, and she was probably 8 years old when I came home. It was called QLE, question, listen, expand, right? Just basic sales training, but it's really logical. And I think it came from Xerox originally. But the point is, you ask a question, then you really listen intently, and then you expand on the answers, and you really get the other person talking instead of talking about you. We all come in and just want to talk about ourselves. So I have this training and I come home and my daughter's in a really bad mood and we're riding in the car. And I just started asking her questions and listening to her, and then, asking another question that was kind of the general next logical question. And her mood just went like from this to this. And then I made a mistake. I told her what I was doing. So now when I try to, she goes, I know what you're doing, Dad. But I'm telling you, it works. And it's really at the end of the day, we solve problems. And the better people perceive that we're going to understand their problem, the better they perceive that we can solve that problem. And so this, so you're exactly right. Listening, asking good questions and listening and then asking more. If you do that properly, people will open up, even people that are fairly close to the vest normally. So
that's a good story. And by the way, I don't think you made a mistake. I think you gave her the gift of consciousness.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do, but I wasn't able to play that on her anymore.
No, it's gone. It's gone.
She turned out all right though, Meny. So I would agree with you. It wasn't a mistake.
What a gift. Yeah. That's awesome. Anybody, we only have a few more minutes, and I don't know, we have some of the usual suspects. You guys want to pitch anything, any listings you have sitting, any needs that you have? Well, we have a few more minutes. Or maybe I might have you read us the whole list that the Ashar team has for us, but
I was actually looking at it right now.
I thought so.
Yeah, no, a couple new ones that we haven't taken to market fully yet. We've got one that's a development deal down in South LA, 9418 Compton Avenue, currently a duplex. On the site, you can redevelop it two ways, actually. You can either redevelop it into 17 units, or you can have potential of putting an ADU and a junior ADU on it. You've got about 10,000 square feet of land. So it gives you the flexibility of doing either or. Asking price is on the lower side at 745,000. So we've got that one. And then for all the cannabis lovers out there, we have a property out in Adelanto, about 24,000 square foot warehouse, was a former extraction lab, about 4.5 acres of land. On that one, we are asking $3,895,000. It comes with all the equipment. The licenses can be purchased as well alongside that. Those would be the two new ones we have. Luckily, we put another one under escrow this week, somehow, some way. I don't know how that happened. But other than that, we've got West Vernon, which you can do 70 unit development on. Low income, all 100% affordable low income. You can do 74 units on that site. That one's asking us 3.2 million with a good amount of flexibility in that price as well. If you guys don't want any more information, you guys know where to reach me.
That's awesome.
Well, Jason Duvall here. We're working on a portfolio of distressed assisted living memory care facilities right now. 3 specific locations in Oxnard, downtown Long Beach, and Palmdale. 2 of the 3 can be delivered vacant, but they're approximately 70,000 square foot assets, fully remodeled. One just got the occupancy certificate. So they're distressed, huge moving parts from EB5s and all sorts of neat nuances to this portfolio. If you have anybody in the assisted living space that's looking to purchase or develop, let me know. This one's gonna be the tough one of the year, but we're determined to make it happen.
Yeah, sounds like a good one. Thank you guys for sharing. Anybody else? Okay. First, John Merrill, thank you for your time, your wisdom. Thank you for being a leader in our amazing organization, and keep again just evolving and creating breakthroughs for yourself and for others. And thank you for also asking questions, being involved, and letting us know, validate basically our involvement and participation is a significant part of what we're trying to do as a community for all of us guys. So definitely get involved.
Yes, thanks for the invitation. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet you all. So thank you.
Likewise, Kim, thank you for the for hooking up John. And guys, thank you so much. And use our channels, the WhatsApp group, or the mass email if you guys want to get more information or share anything that you might like. Kim, anything else?
No, I think you covered everything.
And we have one more meeting for the year, right? Another commercial touch for this year.
Yes, we do. Let me tell you
Yeah, so we have one more meeting 2 weeks from now. It's every, again, other
20th.
Tuesday, the 20th, every other Tuesday. And then we're gonna, in a couple of weeks, should be able to finish the 2023 schedule, at least the first quarter for you guys. So if you have any great speakers, people like John, you want to refer to us, different masterminds, anything whatsoever, let us know. We'd love to give them exposure, and vendors, affiliates, you think you're gonna give us some added value, and also for them, please do, guys. So keep it up, stay in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Meny.
Thank you.
Bye, John. Again, bye, everybody.